Okay, don't forget, you can watch Ask Boris in high definition on the website. Somebody's ringing me, it's all right. LBC.
I'll take that.
.co.uk is right. No, let's go. No, before you. No, I'm not letting you answer my phone, Mr. Ferrari. Before we get into
how many phones have you got? Like a drug dealer. How many have you got, Mr. Mayor?
I have two phones, but I've got an Apple, and one of the reasons I've got an Apple is because we are today. TfL is making an important announcement about Apple Pay.
Right.
I don't know what Apple Pay is, but it's going to be fantastic.
Well, tell us more about this.
I want
to hear more about Apple Pay.
Apple Pay pales in. It's some system by which you can pay using your mobile phone. Anyway, TfL.
Pay for what?
Pay for transport on.
How does it work?
It works by use of an Apple device. But before we waste very shortly.
Well, what does that mean? This afternoon?
Try it. If you've got an Apple device, let's see if it works.
So I hold it over the scanner, do I? Is that how it works?
I imagine it's something like that.
Well, do I purchase tickets with it? Do I go to a ticket office? How does it work?
Listen, mate, I think what you're going to have to do is look it up on the TfL website and check it out.
Thank God this isn't live.
It's Apple Pay. It's Apple Pay. You heard it here first. So Nick Ferrari. Have you got an Apple? Have you got some sort of Apple gizmo?
No, I don't. Actually.
Oh well, there you go. You have.
No, I've got an HTC.
Okay. Well. Anyway, for our listeners who do have access to such technology,
so something's happening, but we're not quite sure when or how.
No, it's happening virtually now, and it's big, and it involves your ability to pay with an Apple device, but it pales into insignificance, by the way, with what we are doing to help taxi drivers this morning.
Well, that's a call coming up. Let's take the first call.
Should we go to Douglas?
Yes,
Douglas.
Please, let's go to have a taxi call. Douglas, go ahead.
Douglas in Windsor. Douglas.
Good morning. I must say that I've just tried the Apple and it works very well. My one is a Granny Smith, and I recommend it.
Granny Smith. I get that.
There you go.
What's your question of the Mayor?
The question is about the air quality that we have in London. What are you doing about it? And I can give you the remedy for it straight away. Instead of having the current congestion tax you have a proper congestion charge, say £25 or £50. You will then stop people going into London. You won't have the problem with the air quality because the traffic lights are always red. You've got too many right turns. You've got trucks which have got emissions coming out at floor level instead of coming out at the back of their with the exhaust up there. What are you going to do about it? Or are you going to keep the congestion charge just affordable, though you've got a revenue stream?
So it was reported earlier this month, Mr. Mayor, more than 1,300 Londoners have died prematurely due to toxic air already this year. Mr. Mayor.
It is, of course, a huge problem, Douglas, and you're right to draw attention. It's something, by the way, that has been getting better. And although I'm obliged to say this, I know people worry deeply about air quality, but we have greatly reduced nitrogen oxide emissions down by 20%. Particulate matter is down by 15%. We've got the largest fleet of hybrid cleaner buses anywhere in Europe already on the streets. We're rolling those out. We're bringing in cleaner, greener vehicles the whole time, and you'll know what we're doing, Douglas, with the ultra-low emission zone by 2020, which will halve our emissions again and bring us actually into compliance with the European Union stipulations. And I'm basically a technological optimist. I think your solution, which is sort of wonderful, but I think, I'm afraid would be deeply detrimental to the London economy, because it would simply penalise anybody who wanted to drive. And I think that unfortunately the income would be very little, because people would be, frankly, there would be no way that many people could afford to take their vans, trucks into the centre of town, and it would be a paralysing measure for the economy. So I don't think we want to go that way. What we've got to do is go with what technology offers us. And if you think back to the 1950s, Douglas, you had people dying in their tens of thousands.
Oh, so that makes it all right now, then,
in single episodes. What I'm saying is that just in my mayoralty, Nick, air quality has substantially improved.
Well, Shadow Environment Minister Barry Gardner says you won't deliver until 2030.
No,
the figures, the sort of levels that are required we're waiting until 2030.
Well, we've already delivered.
Is he right?
Just in the last 7 years, just since I've been mayor, I've pointed out some of the reductions that we've had. And when you go to some of these real hotspots on the Marylebone Road, on all the places where there have been the highest concentrations of pollution particulates. Actually, one of the things that has really stunned even the air quality campaigners in the last year or so has been the reductions we're seeing there as well. Now, London is very, very scrupulous. When we have an air quality monitor, we put it right by the place where it can expect to receive the most belching gusts of
fumes.
Fumes, thank you, from the backs of the buses and the trucks. And many other cities are less scrupulous, and in order to meet EU compliance rules, they shove them out of the way. We don't do that, and we are working very hard to improve the quality of our fleet.
All right.
And in the centre of town, I mean, Douglas's vision of a centre of town that doesn't have any polluting vehicles in it is one that we will achieve, not by crippling fines, but with new technology.
All right, Douglas, we must move on. Can we go to the next caller, Mr. Mayor?
Can we go to Johnny in Brixton?
Morning, Mr. Mayor.
Morning, sir.
Yeah, I've been a cab driver for 32 years, so I won't go on to the usual rant and rave. But I just like one simple question which you raised about 3 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
What have you, the Mayor, Boris Johnson, Latin scholar, actually done concerning the massive amount of minicabs? You made a promise that you would stop it. So I'd like to know exactly...
Stop what? Stop minicabs?
For Peter Hendy, minicabs, yes. Well, and actually puts a block on the number of licences today being issued. And I've got a second thing, a second question. How will you feel under your leadership that you are being instrumental, along with Hendy of Totally Failing London, TfL, that it's the death of a black cab?
Right.
Just two simple questions.
Okay, Johnny. Well, first of all, on minicabs, I'm not sure quite what you're asking for. If you want me to ban all minicabs, that is obviously not something that I can or would want to do. They do perform a valuable service to the public, and they're an important part of the transport economy in London. What we're announcing today is a big increase in the number of compliance officers, bringing the total number of the team to 82. As you know, what we've also been doing since last month is a huge
Explain
operation.
What a compliance officer does,
This is people to stop minicabs from touting illegally. Basically, the difference between a minicab and a black cab is a minicab may not ply for hire in the street, and obviously when minicabs try to do that, they should be stopped, they should be intercepted, and they should be fined, and if necessary, their vehicle should be taken away, crushed, impounded, and all the rest of it. So we've beefed up the compliance teams. We're putting we've had a big campaign to enforce that during May, and reported 1,336 minicab drivers were told to move on. 500.
Johnny, why are you groaning?
538.
Why are you groaning, Johnny?
Hang on, let me just finish. 538 were. He's asked me what I'm doing about the minicabs.
The audience. He's groaning.
He's asked me what I'm doing about minicabs. I'm trying respectfully to give him the answer. We are also, Johnny, finally on minicabs, we are also consulting on a new frame of rules for them, so they have to know English, they have to understand the geography of London, and we want a quantity ceiling on the number of minicab licences that we issue. Now, we cannot currently do that under the law of this country as it stands, and we need new legislation. Say again?
So actually, what you're telling London is that I, Johnny of Brixton, black cab driver, can today set up a new firm with minicabs and just get them licensed to saturate the market even further.
Well, what is certainly true is that in the last... hang on a moment. What is certainly true is that in the last few years, you've seen a huge increase in the number of minicabs, and they've gone up from about 45,000 to about 80,000, 50,000 to 80,000 today, not far short of 80,000. And that's why we are trying now to get powers... And we live, I'm afraid, Johnny, in a free society, and we need powers to restrict the number of licences that are being issued. And I have to tell you, in all friendship and sincerity, this is not a measure that is widely supported at the moment in Parliament or in government. People do not see why people applying for a licence to be a minicab driver should be prevented. It is a difficult case that we have to make, but we are making it, and we are sticking. And to get to your second question, we are sticking up for the black cab trade. It is the gold standard of taxi services in the world, and we are doing our level best to support it.
I think you've missed my point completely. What I'm trying to get across is, yes, we need minicabs. yes, we need the...
Well, how many do you need, Johnny?
We've got enough. You know, do you know what? I would love you. I'd love to job share with you for one day. Get into this cab during one of your days off in between your many jobs. I know you're a very busy man. And come to work in this cab and see what it's like to your earning capacity to be 40% down.
As I said the other day, I understand the rage of taxi drivers at what has happened to the market, and they are dealing with the impact of very powerful force, which is consumer choice and preference. And Johnny is now going to go into a great tirade, and there's nothing to do with consumer choice and preference, and it's all unfair, and that they're and Uber are competing not on a level playing field, and I totally understand that, and I accept that. And I accept that. But what we're trying to do, Johnny, is to help your trade by introducing new measures to insist that minicab drivers know English, that they have a basic understanding of the geography of the city, and we want to bring in a restriction on the number of minicabs. Well, that is directly the point you're asking me. We want a restriction on the number.
Right, last point to you, Johnny, because I must move on. Johnny, last point from you, sir.
The point I was making, sadly, the mayor refuses to answer a direct question.
Rubbish! I've just answered you directly. What have I not answered directly?
Let's hit the direct question, Mr. Mayor. The direct question, Johnny.
You're talking through the back of your neck. I'm sorry. What have I not answered directly?
The direct question was: we have got too many out there. Puts a block on the number.
I've told you what we're trying to do. We can't, under the law of England at the moment, we cannot do that, and we're seeking a change in the law.
He has made those points. By the way, how did we ever get to a situation where minicab drivers can't speak English and they're plying the streets of London?
Well, because currently there is no rule that says you have to speak English in order to live and work in this city. And
how do you pass your driving test if you can't read the highway code?
You know, what we are seeking are ways to ensure that people who do
so we've got people driving cabs who can't understand what do they make of road signs?
Well, what we are doing is going forward with a series of proposals to make sure that minicab drivers
in this situation in the first place.
Well, you know. I'm sure that most minicab drivers do have a basic understanding of English, but there are probably I am told there are some who don't speak it well enough. And what we are seeking to do, and I've personally never encountered one, by the way, but I'm told that this is the case. What we are seeking to do is to make sure they do have such a command, and that they have a basic understanding of the geography of the city, and to restrict the numbers. And I'm sorry that Johnny and other taxi drivers are in such a rage. I have to say that the strikes that they have organised and the measures that they have taken to try to rectify the situation do one thing and one thing only, which is draw the attention of the public to the rival service that is being offered, and greatly boost the presence of that service in the market. So I would advise them to work with us to boost the black cab trade as the classic Rolls-Royce service that people are always going to get another, that has disabled access, that has a driver who is friendly, who is knowledgeable, and who can help you around the city. And that is what we want.
We must move on to other callers.
Thank you. We're going now to Ben in Orpington.
Great part of the country. Ben, go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Not at all.
What I wanted to sort of speak to you about is, I don't know, did you get an opportunity to watch the documentary about the Met Police and Mark Duggan?
I'm afraid I didn't catch it. I'm afraid I was unavoidably detained doing something else. I will catch up with it as soon as I can. I understand it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I'm a black man, a professional, and I'm a little bit frustrated with a movement within some of the black communities that are using black as a reason for them not being successful. I was incredibly angered, incredibly embarrassed about how some people showed their mourning in the form of robbing First Sport and other buildings. One of the greatest concerns I have at the moment is that it seems that the Met is on the back foot for protecting the general public. Mark Duggan was a known criminal, and gun crime is something that we shouldn't tolerate.
Yeah. So what is your question, Ben?
Go on, sorry, Ben.
What I want to understand here is that we keep hearing that the Met police are under all this pressure, and they feel that they're underfunded, and I think that they just were left out to hang.
So, what is your question?
My question is that why you not be more vocal to support them? Why are you not generating more funds so that they can do their job even better than they're doing at the moment?
Okay, well, thanks, Ben. I mean, I think your final point is a really good one, which is what are we doing to fund the Met properly? And I totally agree that we need to have a high number of police officers on the streets in London, that they should be always visible, and that's what we've achieved, and that's what we're going to continue to try to achieve. And the numbers are back up at about 32,000. And the acid test, Ben, is that, and this goes for all communities, and of course crime particularly affects black and minority ethnic communities. Crime is coming down and continues to fall. And but on the specific issue of confidence in black and minority ethnic communities and all that kind of stuff, it is very, very important that London has a police force that reflects the composition of the city, and we're getting there. I'm not going to pretend it's going fast, but we've seen a significant improvement
is committed
since I was elected.
Why do officers not have faith in the current commissioner?
Well, I don't think that's true. By the way,
well,
I think
they have in front of me.
They
Mr.
have
Mayor.
every reason to have faith in him, and by the way, he's doing.
Why don't they?
1 in
5 officers and staff agreed they had 1 in 5 agreed they had confidence in the leadership provided by senior leaders in the Met, i.e. 4 of 5 don't.
Well,
why is that?
I didn't see the survey. I didn't see its methodology. I don't know who was consulted, and frankly, the
survey of the Met's own 47,000 officers and civilian staff was consulted.
Well, I'm not.
4 out of 5.
I'd be surprised if every one of 47,000 people was consulted.
Well, they were consulted. Those who chose to respond.
Okay. Well, look, I happen to think that irrespective of what figures the survey may have produced, the officers, men and women of the Met, have every reason to be incredibly proud of what they're achieving in London.
This is totally contrary.
And of their service.
50% disagree that there's a positive atmosphere among their colleagues. 20% believe the Met treats its people fairly. 63% believe it doesn't. 4 out of 10 feel not motivated to go to work. Well, what are you going to do about the leader of all of this? If this was a private company, you'd be asking questions, wouldn't you?
Well, I have to. What I do, Nick, is I look at the results, and I have to say that I think that the Met is delivering and has delivered very substantial falls in crime. They have managed a huge, as Bernard was saying just now in his interview with you, they've managed to do that against a background of finding very significant savings in their budgets.
It's happening in the health service, everywhere.
And look at the outputs, look at the work that's being done. And
they don't like him.
Well, you say that. I'm not. They haven't favoured us with their names. These people, we don't know. We don't.
So it only counts if I give you their names.
You might as well. I'm afraid that I'm not inclined to value that survey more highly than I do the
emails,
the results of the.
Graham, are you going to make the cycling superhighway mandatory for cyclists to use?
Well, we will. It's very difficult to compel cyclists to go in a certain place. We will look at that. I am discussing that. I'm discussing that with.
No, it's a yes or no. We've spent, is it £30 million on this damn thing, which is dug up Upper Thames Street? That goes with the pace of an elderly snail now when you try and drive through there. Will it be mandatory for cyclists to use it?
Well, we will see. We will see. I think obviously it'd be a shame to construct. It's like
a
shame to construct such
How much does this cost?
Such a wonderful facility. Like putting in a hamster wheel for a hamster that doesn't then use it.
How much does this cost? Is it 30 million or is it 300 million?
And
how much is it, Mr. Mayor?
Well,
the cycle superhighway.
The overall package is about, I think, for both of them, about 80 million from
80 million. 80 million pounds.
I think for all the
latest
cycle
superhighway
packages. Well, we're looking at it. Well, obviously they'd be mad not to. But again, you're talking about framing new. You'd have to, I suppose, frame new.
You can't get through parts of London because of this damn thing at the moment.
Well,
one lane crawling slowly towards another lane while this wretched thing is being built. Blokes standing around all day long in high vis vests doing nothing.
Do you want us to do things to make cycling safer or not?
Yes, of course.
You've got to get off the fence. You've got to stop
What do you mean?
Around.
I'm not the mayor. I'm not the... I haven't got to get off any fence.
You are. Well, hang on. Well, you've sat on that fence so long, iron has entered your soul. You've been on the one hand, you've been asking us to put in measures to
yes. I put them on the back roads. I wouldn't have them hammering up and down Upper Thames Street.
You have, and you've been whinging away and you've been talking about my failures to lead on.
I'm not the mayor. I wouldn't spend £80 million on something they don't have to use.
And here we are with actually, I can tell you something, Nick. Today, I can tell you that cycling in London this year is safer than it has ever been before.
Right.
The number of
I'm pleased to hear that.
Seriously, the risk of being killed and seriously injured on a bike is now lower than it's ever been before, and that is something Londoners care passionately about. I have to comfort the families of people who've lost their lives in cycling accidents. It is a terrible thing. Some of the injuries that are sustained, even when the victims don't die, are truly horrendous.
I can imagine.
And we need to look after people properly. Our cycling superhighways will be fantastic for this city. Yes, of course, they mean some disruption. And I apologise to you motorists, Londoners who do experience this. Well, you've spoken, very, very emphatically about the disruption. And I accept that. The question: Should we? Are we going to insist that cyclists use the facility? It seems to me they'd be crazy not to.
Yeah, but they won't be mandated.
They'd be crazy not to. We are currently discussing that very issue in TfL. We haven't yet made a decision, but it is on the table for discussion. I think cyclists. Let me put it this way, for the benefit of our caller, our emailer. I think cyclists would be absolutely crazy not to use a wonderful, safe cycle superhighway.
Extraordinary, tens of millions of pounds, but we don't have to use it. Where are we going now, Mr. Mayor?
And let us go now. Well, we've done Johnny, but here we go.
It's Norman in Rickman.
Yeah. Norman in Rickmansworth.
Norman, you're on the radio. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you name me 5 bullet point changes that will be required to the EU before the Tory party will tell us we should stay in the EU and not vote no? Specifics.
Well, Norman, I can't give you those changes now because I think the Prime Minister has yet formally to set out the position. I think I'm correct in saying that. But obviously, one of the things that he wants, and that's absolutely clear, is a 4-year cooling off period, a 4-year time lag before people who come here from other European countries can claim benefits, whether in-work benefits or not. Number one. I think what we should also have, and from speaking from my own point of view, I think we need to see a new self-denying ordinance from Brussels. We need to make sure that national parliaments are able to hold up the yellow card and stop unnecessary legislation and regulation. I think that we should have fundamental reform of the CAP. Though, by the way, that is not as popular with British farmers as you might think. They've now become very used to the subsidies from the CAP. I think the whole social chapter stuff is completely nonsensical, and I see no reason for that. I would like to see I think it's totally wrong that we have a single market in, say, German-made machine tools, but not in services from this country. And British financial services, British accountancy, whatever it happens to be, architectural firms, still face absurd barriers to setting up in and operating in other European jurisdictions. And we need to have a level playing field there if we're going to have a proper single market. And we need, and by the way, we need a proper transatlantic free trade area, and we need to get rid of, this is about my 8th point, I suppose, get rid of the idea of ever closer union. Now, I think it is crazy, Norman, that we are currently talking about devolution to the nations and regions of the UK, but we aren't yet spelling out how we should be devolving power from Europe back to the nations and peoples of the European Union. That's what people want to see. The whole mood of politics, the whole mood of the times is in favour of governing as close as you can to the people who elect you, and that's what we should be doing.
Quick response, Norman.
So you want us to be out of the union because it's not suitable by being in it. and and there is an undertaking that if there's no 4-year cooling off period, we would not have a recommendations to stay in.
Well, I would certainly, it's not for me, but this obviously is for the Prime Minister to decide after his negotiations have been concluded. But I would think that it's pretty clear from everything that's been said so far that at least on that first point, Norman, that is to say, unless we can get treaty change to prevent migrant workers from being able to access benefits before they've been here for 4 years, I think that obviously there'll be no alternative but to recommend a no.
Tell me how that yellow card works.
Well, this is a system that's been proposed by Frans Timmermans, by the Dutch and others, which is basically that national parliaments, or perhaps 2 national parliaments, could simply say this when the Commission proposes a directive. As you know, all the legislation in Brussels originates from the Commission. When the Commission proposes a directive that they think is crazy, they can.
What's the Prime Minister's view on the yellow card?
They can simply put up their yellow card and say.
What's the PM's view on the yellow card?
I think David Cameron is.
Well, he's not supportive of it, is he?
No, I think he is supportive.
Of the yellow card?
And by the way, Mats Persson, who's the guy who worked for a long time on Open Europe, has actually gone to Downing Street to do a lot of work on this.
So the PM
on this
supports this yellow card.
And that yellow card idea, I think, is one that has been championed by Matt. So I'm very optimistic.
David Cameron supports it.
I can't tell you that now. To the best of my knowledge, he supports that kind of idea.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot to play for. The only point I would make in all this is there's no point in going into a negotiation like this unless you're prepared to walk away and to
Do you think he is prepared to walk away,
paint an alternative vision for Britain. And there is a glorious
Do you think Mr. Cameron would
vision.
walk away?
I think if he didn't get what he wanted and what he undertook to the British people to get, then yes, of course he would. And I think what would happen was that there would be a recommendation for a no vote.
And should his ministers be allowed to campaign for Britain to leave the European Union?
Well, obviously, under those circumstances, the Prime Minister would himself be advocating a no vote.
Right, no, but let's say that he's happy with the deal as he gets it, and then we go to the great
vote.
Yeah.
Can
ministers campaign against staying, i.e., can they campaign to exit Europe and continue in their position?
Well, that is a matter for the Prime Minister and the government to decide. I think in 1975, from memory, I think cabinet ministers were allowed to campaign against the staying in and to keep their positions.
Is that how it should be done, a la Harold Wilson?
Look, it seemed to work last time. It did. I can't remember. Frankly, I wasn't politically conscious in 1975.
Not much changed there. But that's what should be.
I was slightly, if anything, slightly less politically conscious in 1975 than I am today. Probably roughly. But look, I
so
think
they should be able to campaign for an exit and hold their post.
I don't see why not myself, but we seem to have been around the houses a bit on this. And I think just thinking about it out loud on the spur of the moment, let me think. I think probably it would be safer and more harmonious just to say, okay, you make your minds up. Right. I think probably on something like this, does it? Do you really need to bind everybody in? I think there will be different views. Get it over. I think the Prime Minister will be able to make a recommendation. I think it's almost certain that if he gets the deal that he wants, the overwhelming majority of his colleagues, I'm sure, on both the front and the back benches, will support him. So I think he'll be in a very strong position.
To campaign against him if he didn't get the deal you felt necessary.
Well, I think he'd be if he didn't get the deal, then he himself. Well,
the yellow card.
Let's see. Let's see where we get.
You'd be prepared to campaign for an exit.
Let's see where we get to, and don't forget that the crucial thing is to go into this thing hard and to set out a proper list. And I've sort of given a slightly rambling answer to Norman about all the things I would like to see. But this is a moment of huge opportunity for Britain. I make my point again. We've we've given up so much power from the British people to this supranational body. The British people, in common with all the devolved authorities of this country and nations and regions, I think could do it better, do some of these things better themselves. And that goes for the German people and the Dutch and everybody else.
We pause briefly to get the news here on LBC with Lisa Aziz.
London Mayor Boris Johnson's told LBC a consultation is going to look into ways of limiting the numbers of minicabs in London. It includes new rules so drivers have to understand English and know their way around the city.
What we're trying to do, introducing new measures to insist that minicab drivers know English, that they have a basic understanding of the geography of the city, and we want to bring in a restriction on the number of minicabs.
HSBC is looking to cut up to 25,000 jobs globally, and as many as 8,000 of them could go in the UK. The bank's also confirmed it will finish its review of whether to move its headquarters away from London by the end of the year. The head of the Met Police has told LBC the force will immediately look into any new information linked to the unsolved murder of an 8-year-old boy in London. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe was responding to an LBC investigation which has found a possible link between the death of Vishal Mehrotra in 1981 and a notorious paedophile gang. At 9:15, the FTSE 100 was down 6, 67.84, and LBC weather mainly dry and breezy with sunny spells for London and the south east today. Highs of 16 degrees, the chance of a few light showers across England and Wales, but staying mainly dry with some sunshine. Rain, though, likely later for the north of England and southern Scotland, cloudier for central areas and Northern Ireland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
All right, listening to Nick Ferrari at breakfast here, 9:37. Ask Boris with London Mayor Boris Johnson. And an Ask Boris question from me before we go back to the callers, Mr. Mayor. The estimated £3 million annual running costs of a garden bridge over the Thames is now going to be met out of public funds.
No,
despite
sir.
you telling me...
No, it is not going to be met. No, Nick, it's not going to be met out of public funds. And I perfectly understand people's anxiety about this, but what we have insisted on is that the Garden Bridge Trust give us guarantees that they are going to, they will be in a position to fund the thing in
Documents seen by the Observer newspaper, signed it is reported by you, reveal the Mayor will act as a guarantee to cover, quotes, the maintenance of the bridge structure, maintenance and operation of the garden and public space.
Yes, I mean, look, yes, I understand why. This is not some secret document. This is an entirely public document. In order to get planning permission from Westminster and I think from Lambeth, they have to see that the funds, that the Garden Bridge Trust does have an ultimate guarantor, and that we are doing.
So what does that cost us?
Nothing, because the Garden Bridge Trust are themselves going to be projecting annual income of £3 million.
What if they don't hit that?
From the scheme, and the annual operating costs of the bridge are estimated at less than £2 million. So the income is going to exceed costs by about more than £1 million a year.
And I've got the documents calculate the cost of running the bridge at 2.8 million. You've got it less than 2 million.
They've got the figures I have are 1.975 million.
What happens though if it doesn't take enough money? Who then pays?
Well, obviously we've been very firm with the Garden Bridge Trust and said that they have got to be in a position to fund this themselves. But I want to repeat the message I think I gave a few months back, that the guarantee such as we've been obliged to make it is purely in order to get the planning permissions through. And it is absolutely understood that the Garden Bridge Trust will provide the running costs of the bridge.
No public funds?
No. There will be no public funds for the running of the bridge. And
when's it going to open?
It will open, I think, in It will start next year. It will open, I think, in 2018.
Can't wait.
So it's going to be superb. And frankly, there was a good piece by Simon. Well, Simon Jenkins read an amazing piece. Actually, he wrote some very colourful pieces about London, all kinds. But he wrote a piece saying that the Garden Bridge was such a good project that it should be paid for entirely out of public funds. Do you remember that? I thought he finally taken leave of his senses. We can't do that. Most of this, the vast bulk of this, is being paid for by the private sector and by private contributions and by philanthropy, actually. But in the end, a huge project in the centre of the city cannot be done without the support of the municipal authority and the city itself. And so giving this, it is the only way to get this thing through is to give a guarantee of the kind that we have given. But it is that guarantee is itself underpinned by the commitment of the Garden Bridge to cover their costs and more than cover their costs.
We must move to other calls. I think we're going to
Mary in Thornbrook.
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, good morning, Boris.
Good morning.
I'm actually one of your constituents. I live in Uxbridge,
right.
And I've got a twofold question for you, which concerns not really me, but my kids. They both are in their 30s. They have housing in Uxbridge, but they want to move, and it has become almost impossible because we have quite a bit of housing being built in Uxbridge, but the prices are just out of reach. Even though they have properties to sell, they can't. Number one, the houses are expensive. Number two, they can't get mortgages for the price of the houses that they're selling. So they're stumped in two directions, and I just want to know.
Sorry, did you say, Mary, they have houses to sell?
They do. They live in houses. They've been on the housing ladders. They're obviously going to move because their families of the borough.
I understand.
We're a family. We all support each other with childcare when they work and etc. etc.
Yeah.
We want to all stay reasonably close to each other, but the housing prices in the borough have shot up to such an extraordinary rate that, number one, if they sell their houses, which they have tried to put their house on the market, it's an impossibility to buy another house because they don't reach that price range. Then when they go to the other stumping point is when they go to the banks for a mortgage, they won't give them enough money to buy a house the price the houses are in our borough.
Yeah.
Even though they could afford to pay that price, there's a cap on because, say, my son, for example, got 3 children, so he's assessed on that. On his wages.
I must bring the Mary.
No, Mary is speaking for a huge number of Londoners now, and that there are people who, families who work very hard, who's can suddenly seen that their kids grow up in the area where they're living in, and suddenly realise that their kids cannot afford to buy homes in the boroughs, in the neighbourhoods where they've grown up, and that is a really tough thing. It's happening all over the city, and there are several answers. The first is, Mary, it may be that we can help your children with help to buy products, with part by part rent products, and I would urge you to get onto the City Hall website and see what is going, see whether there are projects where you can, if you can't get the whole mortgage, and I understand the problems with getting the mortgage that your children are experiencing. If you can't get the whole mortgage, then you can get support and then staircase up. But
why can't the banks? What is the reason why the banks can't allow? I know that there's a cap on it for the country, but in the city and the outskirts, in the boroughs of London, that cap be higher. I mean, it's not that the amount of money that, say, my son wants is out of his reach of payment, because it's not. That both him and his wife work, and they could afford to pay more money, but the cap is low because it's a countrywide cap on people that have got mortgages. Why can't that be raised slightly within the London boroughs?
So this is the cap on mortgages?
Yes, say like when you go to the mortgage company for a mortgage, they will say, well, we can only lend you this much. But the housing prices in London are so much more than the rest of the country. So they're only going to get that. They're not reaching the amount they need to buy a house.
I understand. Well, frankly, I think that it is a great shame that mortgages are so tough now, and what the whole Help to Buy scheme was really meant to help with that. Unfortunately, it hasn't had as big an impact in London as it has had in the rest of the country for the very reason that you give. Mary, the best answer, and I suppose the big answer to your question, why can't people get mortgages for much bigger multiples of their incomes? And I suppose that the real answer is, well, everybody is still, everybody remembers what happened with the subprime crisis. Everybody remembers when banks took on too much debt that wasn't properly secured, and there is an anxiety about that. But what we've got to do is build more homes, and that is the only answer. I mean, in a way, I remember the 1970s, Mary, when property prices fell in London, and they have, and indeed they've fallen in more recent memory, and everybody suddenly feels a whole lot poorer, and it really gives a massive kick in the solar plexus to the economy.
Good luck to your children, Mayor. I have to move on for time reasons. This is my fault. You mentioned the banks, Mr. Mayor. You'll be aware this morning that HSBC has announced that 20,000 jobs will be lost globally, thousands to be lost in the United Kingdom. Somewhere such as the mayor of London, obviously it's going to have an impact on this city. How do you react to this news?
Well, clearly, it's one of the reasons why I urge people not to get into senseless banker bashing and not to attack financial services and imagine they're the root of all evil. They are big employers in our city, and I hope very much that people will recognise that, and London will always be a great global centre of commerce. Obviously, HSBC has got to make some tough decisions like all banks. We have seen a downsizing of the financial sector generally in London, but it remains the number one financial capital in the world.
We've just had a call from Uxbridge. How disappointed were you with Brentford not managing to get into the playoffs?
Listen, I'm not going
to.
I'm not even going to,
What league did Brentford play?
Listen, Nick, I'm afraid to say. My knowledge
of the local team.
My knowledge of football, I know. All right, okay.
All your many of your
I know, but what would you?
What would
you? Okay, what would
you? Do you, like me, celebrate the appointment of Marinus Diekhuysen as the manager?
Listen, I am not going to go around.
What tactics should he bring?
What he should? I've not got the faintest idea. I haven't got the
Staying
faintest
with football,
idea.
Then, would Sol Campbell be a good Conservative mayor?
I haven't got the thing. I think the important thing is to have the widest and strongest possible.
Yeah, but would Sol Campbell make a good
strongest possible field, and I think obviously Sol Campbell would be a great addition to that lineup, and we'll have to see if he catches the selector's eye.
Surely it has to be Zach Goldsmith as the candidate, doesn't it?
Well, I've read all sorts of names in this context, Nick, and I think it would be totally wrong of me to blight anybody's candidacy by.
What are the qualities that needs to be mayor? If there were three qualities that you need to be a mayor of London, what are the three qualities in any particular order?
It would be totally wrong of me to offer any
No. You must have an idea what the qualities are. What does he or she need to bring to the job? The three things you need to be mayor.
Well, I think
I don't know.
You've got to have a lot of energy. You've got to have a keen eye to value for money, and you've got to love the job, I think.
Final caller is Theo in West Drayton. We've just got time for a last call. Theo, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, both.
Good morning, Theo.
Just a question. I live in West Drayton, which is very, very near Heathrow Airport.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to know what your stance is now that you are an MP of Uxbridge. How your stance is with the Heathrow third runway.
Well, I think that the third runway, as I've said many times before, would be a catastrophic environmental mistake, and it would dramatically change and not just the third runway, by the way, but any plans to extend the runway would dramatically change the character, the quality of life in that part of the city. You'd have vastly more road traffic congestion, you'd have more pollution, to say nothing of the aircraft noise that people would experience. So I don't think that is the right way forward. West Drayton, of course, will be served by Crossrail, which will be totally fantastic.
Quick response, Theo.
But if all this infrastructure has been put in place already, such as the M25 being extended around that area, the public transport links are much better in and out and around, Crossrail as well. Don't you think that it's just a waste of money that all that infrastructure has been put in for the sole purpose of extending Heathrow Airport?
No, because Theo, as I'm sure you know, in order to make sense of the third runway, you'd have to do even more. I don't know what you mean by extending the M25. You'd have to radically redesign the M25. You'd have huge investment in roads of a kind I don't think that the Howard Davies Commission has fully appreciated. And you'd have a very destructive effect on the local environment. So I think if you talk about road infrastructure, you ain't seen nothing yet. It would be absolutely colossal.
You ain't seen nothing yet, but you have heard it yet, because I'm afraid we must close Ask Boris. I remind everybody the State of the London debate returns to Indigo at the O2 later this month, Tuesday the 23rd of June. Tuesday, 23rd of June, 7:30 it starts. It's live on LBC, where you've just heard London Mayor Boris Johnson. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
On Ask Boris on LBC.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. This is just coming in for Balham. The A24 Balham High Road is closed southbound. It's for accident investigation work just outside Tooting Bec Station. It's fully coned off past Louisville Road just before Tooting Bec Crossroads. Only buses are being allowed through. In Yeading, the A312, the Parkway is closed in both directions. At the Willow Tree roundabout, that's causing delays back to the Ossie Garvin roundabout Hayes and the Target roundabout in Northolt. Also looking at delays still of around 20 minutes on the Woolworth Road, northbound from Camberwell Road towards the Elephant and Castle because of roadworks. On the trains, Southeastern have delays of around half an hour between London Bridge and New Cross. That's because of a signalling problem. And on the tubes, the Central line is now suspended between White City and Holborn, and there's severe delays on the rest of the line, all because of a signal failure at Marble Arch. They've also closed Marble Arch Station as well. Keeping London moving. Next travel updates in half an hour.
LBC Travel.
With Citrix Go-To Meeting. Be in the boardroom when you're out of the office.
Invest in your future with Galliard Homes, pioneers of London Docklands. We have been building landmark schemes here since 1993 and are back with Harbour Central, where apartments start at just £350,000. This is the only